College basketball never disappoints. On Wednesday night alone, we had 5 overtime games, a coach getting ejected in the final 2 seconds of overtime, a player in a different game getting ejected for a punch to the gut, a second straight night with the top 10 SEC team losing at home to an unranked team. Oh, and another team reeling off 38 points in the final 10 minutes of a game to erase a massive deficit. Oh, and guess what? It's Bubble Day.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? Welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, the only daily national college hoop show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, and I want to thank you for joining us to get your college basketball content every single day. In particular, you everydayers, we're glad you're here. If you're not an everydayer, we'd love to have you. Come join the Locked On College Basketball Discord community where we're getting together all day, every day, talking college basketball. As we get into February, you know you're going to want to be there. Come join us. The action is awesome. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. A couple things as we get going today. Number one, congrats to Caitlin Clark from Iowa, who moves into second place on the all-time women's NCAA scoring list. She has 3,423 points and is behind Kelsey Plum of Team USA fame, who has 3,527. Caitlin could probably break that in the Hawkeyes next game. Also, as I said in the cold open, it's Bubble Day. I need to blow some more bubbles while we're talking here. Yeah, here we go. Look, watch. For those of you listening, that was real electric. I know. February 1st marks the day that Andy and I designate as Bubble Day, when we can finally start talking bubble talk because, you know, it's a month to March. Let's talk about bubbles. So that means up until now, we haven't allowed ourselves to talk bubbly things. Oh, but baby, it's time to get a bit bubbly up in this business. So that's what we're going to do. All right, let's start our show today in the SEC. Florida at number 10, Kentucky. Gators win 94-91 in overtime. This is the second straight day, back-to-back nights, that a top 10 SEC team has lost at home to an unranked opponent. On Tuesday night, it was Tennessee losing to South Carolina. Now, not all unranked opponents are made the same. South Carolina, Florida, they are strong teams. In fact, we have South Carolina ranked in our Locked On Top 25 poll. For Florida, this is their first win over an AP Top 10 in like 2 decades. It's their first quad 1 win of this season. That is critical for helping their tournament resume. Oh, by the way, speaking about bubbly language, and on the Kentucky side of things, this is their second loss at Rupp this season already. You remember earlier in the season they lost to UNC Wilmington. So Kentucky, man, 2 losses in the last 3 games, if I'm thinking correctly, back to their loss to South Carolina last week. And so got a few things to figure out for Kentucky, and I think they're too good to not. And part of the issue is that they haven't played a game fully healthy all season. In this game, no DJ Wagner, no Justin Edwards. Justin Edwards is less of a factor. But to me, DJ Wagner might be the biggest X factor Kentucky has, man. When he's on, the Cats seem to be rolling more typically than not. So I'm watching for him. But even with those things happening, still Rob Dillingham came off the bench in this game. Now, he played 39 minutes, but still came off the bench and had 20. So he's producing. I just feel like I'd probably have Rob Dillingham in my starting lineup. I've said that a lot. I'll continue to say it. And I know there's been a lot of that through the years with Coach Cal at Kentucky, where it's like, why are the Harrison twins getting all these shots over NBA like all-stars? Right? But that's what he's done. So who knows? Even still, even shorthanded, those 2 guys, Kentucky had a 10-point lead with 70 seconds left in the first half. Florida goes on a little quick 5-0 run to end the half and then extends it 6 more to an 11-0 run in totality to begin the second half. But then, man, y'all, the rest of the second half was played so tight. And I don't mean like muscles tightened up. I mean, there was no more than a 4-point gap the rest of the way. I mean, it was great stuff. Really, really fun basketball. But unfortunately for Kentucky, it looked like Dillingham was going to be able to step to the line and basically ice the game. Made 1 of 2, so the Cats were up 3. Didn't foul, I might add. Walter Clayton Jr. gets a great pump fake out on the left wing, and I can't remember who the Kentucky player was. And even if I did, I don't want to put this poor young man on blast. But great pump fake for Walter Clayton Jr. to get him to fly by and buries a 3 to tie the game. Kentucky can't get a look. In fact, Florida steals the ball back and gets a look, and it misses. So we're heading to overtime in Lexington. I didn't think that was going to happen. Great resolve from Florida to get this thing down to overtime. And then once there just wasn't much scoring. We had, I mentioned off the top, we had 5 overtime games in all of Division I on Wednesday night. And some of them, like, we'll get to Purdue Northwestern here in a minute, but man, they had a bunch of scoring in that game in overtime. I think it was like 24 points for Purdue and like 15 for Northwestern. 17 total points in this overtime, so not many. And the key shot, the key thing that happened in this overtime was Walter Clayton Jr. hit another 3-pointer that gave Florida an 89-87 lead, and they would not relinquish that. They kind of held on. They made it tough for themselves down the stretch, a turnover and things like that, but held on in Rupp. Big time win for the Gators. Look, anytime Kentucky plays, all I care about is going to look at Reed Sheppard's stat line. Like, I am addicted to looking at Reed Sheppard's stat lines. It's like a drug for me. This dude played the entire 45 minutes of this basketball game, 24 points on 10 of 18 shooting, 3 of 7 from 3, 1 of 2 from the free throw line, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, 2 blocks, and a steal. I mean, come on. I love it. I love it. Give me all the Reed Sheppard stat lines. For Florida, 3 different players with 20-plus points: Tyree Samuel, Walter Clayton Jr., and Zion Pullen. So, man, you love this for Florida. You got to feel good for them. But again, for Kentucky, it's like, boy, going to have to get some things figured out there, because if the health is going to be out, it just feels like it's one of those seasons where they've not played a game fully healthy. And it's like, is that ever going to happen? So Kentucky is just going to have to figure out how to do it shorthanded, unfortunately. You never like to see teams have to do that, but that's the hand they've been dealt. Elsewhere in the SEC, there were a couple other SEC games. Auburn took care of Vandy, for example, no problem there. Arkansas won at Mizzou. The game I want to get to is number 24, Bama at UGA. Now, if you looked at the beginning of this game, you would be shocked when I right now tell you that Alabama wins 85-76. Why is that? Because Georgia got off to a ridiculous start in this game, only frankly bested by St. Mary's start against Santa Clara later on Wednesday evening. But UGA gets off to a 17-2 start in this game. They led by as many as 16 throughout it. And in fact, with 10 minutes left in the game, Georgia still led by 12, 59-47. Remember, I told you, Alabama won this game despite trailing by 12 with 10 minutes to go, because they go on a 38-17 run in the final 10 minutes of the game. That's just what this offense can do. I mean, it is wild what Nate Oates' club can do on the offensive end. It's just the defense hasn't been there. Mark Sears, Grant Nelson both go for 20+. Man, I talked about a Reed Sheppard line. How about this Mark Sears line? 23 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 4 steals. And he does that on 8 of 14 shooting from the field, 3 of 5 from 3, and 4 of 4 from the free throw line. Who did it better, Reed Sheppard or Mark Sears? Love what both of these guys are doing, man. The SEC is so fun up and down, and the standings are wacky, and I am here for the crazy show, right? Alabama, by virtue of coming back, leads the conference at 7-1. Otherwise, they would have been tied with South Carolina and Auburn, who are both 6-2. Tennessee's right behind at 5-2. They're just half a game less. And then Ole Miss, Kentucky, and Florida are all tied at 5-3. So what Florida has done here by their win is they get into a tie right there with the team that they beat, along with Ole Miss. And for Todd Golden's team, man, this is great, great stuff. You love to see it. Well, we turn our attention from one overtime game to another one in the Big Ten, where Purdue yet again needed overtime to see what they could do against Northwestern. Did this one play out different than that loss in Chicago earlier this year? We'll talk about that in just a second. Right after I tell you that this episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Hey, happy Super Bowl time to all those who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Hey, look, if you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is all about finding the best spot to sit, getting all the dips, all the chips, all the finger good foods, a nice drink, just hanging out, sitting down, and maybe even getting in on some of the prop bets because it's so fun, all the ridiculous prop bets that come out. But you can also just bet on the game. 49ers favored by 1.5 at FanDuel. But seriously, they got a bunch of other ways at FanDuel for you to end your NFL season with a W. Not only can you bet on who will win Super Bowl 58, but man, FanDuel's got all sorts of lines for you, like who's going to score a touchdown, what's the point total going to be, and so much more. So new customers, join today, and you're going to get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to sign up. Again, that's FanDuel.com/locked-on. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Let's move to the Big Ten, where Northwestern was visiting number 2 Purdue on Wednesday night. You might recall these two teams have already played. They played to kind of kick off Big Ten play. Purdue was at Northwestern, and the Wildcats, go Wildcats, by the way, got out of that one with a win. So Purdue was seeking some revenge, and they get it. The Boilermakers avenge one of their just 2 losses on the season. I love these two teams playing this year. Both games have gone to overtime. Both times the home team has won. Purdue pulling away in this one, 105-96 in overtime. Y'all, I need the rubber match to this in the Big Ten tournament on a neutral floor, right? Like, give me that action. Like maybe Purdue's the 1 seed and Northwestern's the 4 or something like that. Man, I would just love to see it. But let's not even talk about the game yet. We'll get there in plenty of time. We got to talk about Chris Collins here, who is an absolute legend. This man is ejected at the very end of overtime. I mean, there's like just under 2 seconds left on the clock if I was seeing it right. An absolute dude for going out in a blaze of glory in this thing. Let me just run you through it in case you didn't see it. And if you didn't see it, you need to go find this on YouTube and just watch Chris Collins leaving the court. It's glorious. Okay, so Purdue, the game is basically over, and he comes out on the court while play is ongoing to like confront a referee. He's immediately teed up, ejected, gone. Goes to the sideline. Multiple players are holding him back, and you can read his mouth. He's saying, I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. And it's like, I don't believe you. I hear the words that you're saying. They're not true, coach. Whatever. So while he's kind of being escorted off, he's going now in front of the Purdue bench. Looks like he's trying to be antagonistic. He's just trying to get over to Coach Matt Painter to shake his hand. So even in his frustration and just kind of going off, he still has to go over, give Coach Painter a shake. And then as he keeps on walking, he's pointing out multiple Purdue players, thumbs upping multiple Purdue players like, hey, how you doing? Just like, good game, great job. But it's not the handshake line. Spots Zach Edey down at the end of the bench, runs over, daps him up, gives him some love. Wild stuff. Then finally he runs over to the tunnel, all the while like pumping up the Purdue crowd. It's so good. It's so good. You got to see it. Truly, truly incredible stuff. So what happened? What led to this? Well, hopefully if you went to watch him leaving the floor, you also watched kind of the chunk of his press conference that was germane to what happened. He said, quote, I just don't know if I've ever seen a box score like that, honestly. And goes on to kind of talk to the media like, I know you guys have seen a lot of stuff Have you ever seen anything this wacky? What's he referencing? It's the free throw disparity. You ready for this? Northwestern did a great 75% at the free throw line, 6 of 8. Purdue, 29 of 46 at the free throw line. That's right. They missed more than Northwestern took and still outscored them at the free throw line by 23. This discrepancy is wild. 46 free throw attempts to 8. Woo. Man, that's something. That is something. Okay. Anyway, Chris Collins, great stuff. Thank you for making my night better. What about the game itself? Well, of course, Zach Edey goes for 30 and 15 in this thing. 10 of his points were in overtime. But maybe the biggest thing that keeps happening for Purdue, man, is I love what Lance Jones is bringing this team. 26 points in this game. I just think his addition to this starting lineup is so critical for what Matt Painter has with Zach Edey and Trey Kaufman-Wren and Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer. And then you add Lance Jones into that, man, that might be the thing that seals the way I feel about Purdue. I mean, Purdue and UConn, right? They're just both in a different tier than everyone else right now. But how about Braden Smith? Homie, 16 assists in this game. And I don't know they went to overtime, but still 16 assists. Ridiculous stuff. On the Northwestern side, as you would expect, Boo Buie has a great game. Ty Berry has a great game. They both go for 25 for Coach Collins. And so great performance by the Wildcats on the road to force overtime, but just not enough there in the extra period. And part of this too is a Northwestern win would have really made the Big Ten standings interesting, and would have given Wisconsin a 2-game lead over Purdue and everyone else. But obviously Purdue wins, so they stay just a game behind Wisconsin in the loss column. But for the Wildcats, even with the loss, they're holding fourth right now, just behind Wisconsin, Purdue, and Illinois. And they're in good shape. Getting back to bubble talk, we don't need to talk bubbly about Wisconsin. Northwestern. They're kind of sitting in like that 7-ish seed range right now. But the Wildcats their Big Ten results have just kind of been back and forth between wins and losses, haven't been able to string together more than 2 wins at a time. But kind of now's the time to do that. They're at Minnesota, then home in Nebraska, home Penn State, at Rutgers, at Indiana versus Michigan. I mean, you got to think that there's something in there where you can string together 3 W's. And that would be just really, really big for Northwestern to be able to kind of cement what they're trying to do, especially getting some of those road dubs. Now, all this said about the Big Ten standings, do you remember what Purdue has next upcoming on their schedule? A trip to Madison, Wisconsin on Sunday. The top 2 teams in the league are going at it. I am very excited for this. We've had pretty weak Sunday slates lately. This one's going to be awesome, and I can't wait for it. After what's also going to be, by the way, an incredible Saturday of basketball. We have 3 top 10 matchups in that one, and then obviously this 4th on Saturday as well. Oh, man. Things really did get bubbly elsewhere. We've got a 6-pack for you to close out the show. Mountain West is still continuing to deliver. Boise State did what they needed to do, while a couple other bubble teams were on the wrong side of that on Wednesday night. We'll get to all of that in just a second. All right, Mountain West action. If you're like, Isaac, why are we talking about Mountain West? If you've not been tracking with the Mountain West, you are missing out on some phenomenal and entertaining basketball this season. Seriously, go check out Mountain West, except for the games that they put on the Mountain West network thing that no one can access. So thank goodness this game, Boise State at number 19 New Mexico, was on normal TV. Broncos get this win 86-78 over New Mexico at New Mexico. We had a player for each team get to 30 points. I love those kind of performances. Boise State's Max Rice gets 35 points, while Donovan Dent had 31 for New Mexico. Love it when just 2 dudes are going back and forth like this. Now, look, this is a massive massive win for Boise State. We'll talk more about kind of what it means from a bubbly standpoint here in just a second. And they held a lead for a long time in this game. Boise State did. It wasn't some miracle road win. In fact, New Mexico had been down since like 20-19, finally came back and took a lead at 49-48. But Boise State got it right back and then just kind of closed the game. And so really, really good stuff there from them. So now here's where the standings are at. Utah State still sitting at the top of the Mountain West, 7-1, but Boise State just right behind right now at 6-2, followed by New Mexico at 6-3. So Boise State gives themselves a little leg up here. And then San Diego State and Wyoming are both tied for fourth at 5-3. So that's where we're at. Now, we talk about, this is where we're getting a little bubbly. I'm not going to blow it again, but here's my little bubbles. Boise State was the last team into the field. And I don't mean 64, I mean 68 in Joe Lunardi's bracket. So they, as of the last one, are in Dayton. However, this road win over New Mexico, that's going to be a resume builder. I mean, that's a great resume win for Boise State. And so we'll see what things look like when the net refreshes on Thursday. Obviously, I haven't seen it yet, but you have by the time you're listening to or watching this, so you'll know. But critical win for Boise State. All the more so, you got to think they'll move up because there were two teams just almost directly ahead of them that both lost. Let's take Memphis first. Y'all, what is going on with Penny Hardaway's Memphis Tigers? They lose to Rice on Wednesday, 74-71 at home. Rice was 248 in the net going into this game. That's a quad 4 loss. You cannot do that if you're Memphis. The Tigers have lost 4 straight games right now versus South Florida, at Tulane, at UAB. I get that one in a big way. And then versus Rice. So the Tigers have gone from 15-2, 4-0 in AAC play, and looking really good in the standings. Like, wow, this veteran Memphis team has got something figured out there. Like I have. How many times did I say on this show, man, maybe FAU is really not a runaway with the American anymore, right? Because look at what Memphis is doing. Well, Memphis is not doing those things anymore. And so, like, woof, boy, I just tell you, like, trying to look at the American now and what it's doing. And it's not even that Memphis has fallen all the way down. FAU's not running away with this thing either, and not because of anything they've done. They're 7-1. I get that, whatever, fine. But Charlotte and South Florida are also both 7-1. So we've got a fun mess in the AAC, and we're gonna have to continue to reckon with that. For Memphis, though, here's worse than the losses themselves. 2 of these 4 losses that they've just suffered are quad 3 losses. And then obviously, as I said, this Rice loss is the worst of all. It's a quad 4 loss. Yikes. Now, before in this same latest bracketology from Lunardi, which I think was out on the 30th, so it would have been, Tuesday? Memphis was the top of the last 4 buys. I feel like they've gotta come crashing down, maybe even switching spots with Boise State, or at least dropping in Boise State, rising up. That looks real iffy now. Memphis has got a very tenuous position if they're even in the bracket at all right now. So there's that. Now, another game that helped Boise State on Wednesday night was Providence at number 1 UConn. Huskies win this game 74-65, but it's tough for the Friars. I mean, they're coming off that real emotional game this weekend at home against Georgetown. Ed Cooley's first trip back. And now Providence has to just turn around and go to UConn. They held their own for a while. Providence had an early second half lead, but man, UConn just slowly pulled away in this thing. Here's my biggest takeaway from this game. Stephon Castle had 20 points. Career high, first 20-point game. Uh-oh. You mean to tell me UConn already has everything they have, and Steph Castle's going to start dropping 20-point games now? I mean, come on. Coach Danny Hurley is smiling as he goes to bed on Wednesday night because he knows what he's got with this roster, and I'm telling you, is a great. Now, again, nice fight from Providence. You love to see it. 20 points each from Josh Aduro and Devin Carter, but they can't do it. And Providence was just slightly below where Memphis was in Lunardi's bracketology. So maybe they slide back as Boise State slides up too. Very helpful stuff for the Broncos there. Fourth in our six pack here on Thursday, Baylor, number 18, gets back in the win column at UCF 77-69. Same kind of thing. UCF had a lead in this one, but Baylor, man, they needed this in a big way. They had a 3-game skid coming into this game. Thankfully, they were not yet. They were, how many ranked teams have lost on the road this year? I mean, it's been just insane and ridiculous. Thankfully, they did not fall into that kind of category again. But I mean, to be fair, these 3 losses for Baylor in a row: at K-State in OT by 4, at Texas by 2, and then TCU at home on Saturday in 3 overtimes by 3 points. So it's 3 losses in a row, but it's by 4 and 2 on the road, 1 in overtime, and then 3 at home in triple overtime. So, I mean, Baylor's just right there. And that's the problem with the Big 12. Everything is so close. The margins are so thin, and you got to take care of business. But Baylor does in this one, and will keep trucking. Fifth in our 6-pack, let's go back to the American. UAB at North Texas, big-time AAC game. And oh boy, is it another overtime. I love this. Kind of similar to what we said about Bama and Georgia. I'm going to tell you the winner of this game, but if you were watching the majority of it, you would laugh at me thinking I was wrong, but I'm not. UAB wins this game 82-79. This is a unbearably difficult loss for UNT. They were up 17 points at one time in the first half. They led, the Mean Green did. You ready for this? For the first 39 minutes and 44 seconds of this game. Not only that, they never trailed in regulation. UAB literally never had a lead in regulation, and they won the basketball game. That is brutal, brutal stuff. But they lost the game. North Texas did, because UAB just stayed connected. They fought back and did enough to get it to overtime, and then they won in overtime. I mean, I'm sick if I'm going to bed and that's happened to me. And it was all the more so because UNT got a great look right at the end of regulation, but it just wasn't there. So, man, really good stuff for UAB to fight back and win this game. It's tough for the Mean Green, and obviously that has ramifications in the American standings. Finally, from Wednesday night, Santa Clara at St. Mary's. Look, I came into this game, I was like, man, this is going to be a big WCC game coming in. Both, I think Santa Clara just had 1 loss coming in. St. Mary's undefeated. And the Gales, while the final score is close, a lot of these final scores have been misleading. St. Mary's wins 82-77, but they just blitzed this thing. 16-0 run to start it. Ultimately got up 44-22 at the half. It was ridiculous. Jalen Benjamin from Santa Clara got ejected for punching Mitchell Saxon in the gut. I mean, it's just like this game got real chippy in the first half. And understandably so, because Santa Clara was being treated very poorly. And I don't mean like St. Mary's would do anything dirty other than just scoring a ton. And that's what was happening there. But to Santa Clara's credit, they fight back. They cut it to 4 with like 16 seconds to go. And ultimately, the final margin is 15. Now, you remember St. Mary's was struggling out of the gate. This team was 3-5. And we're like, we thought this team was going to win the West Coast Conference, or everyone predicted it, at least anyway. I was done with them. You probably were too. But now, since that 3-5 point, St. Mary's has gone on a 14-1 run, 14 wins and 1 loss in the last 15 games. So now they're 17-6. They're 8-0 in the West Coast Conference. I still don't think it's enough because of what some of the losses have been for an at-large berth. So they just got to keep doing it in the West Coast Conference and then ultimately win that championship to make the tournament, is what I observe as of today. Who knows as the resume continues to get built, but that's the problem with the West Coast Conference, especially now with no BYU in it and Gonzaga not being as strong as they typically are. That's just where we are and where we're at. All right. Some games Thursday night. We're not going to spend too much time getting into it. And in fact, Andy and I probably won't unpack it much because on Friday's show, we got to get you ready for a loaded slate of games this weekend. So that's great. Thank you so much for being with us on a Thursday. Again, come join the Locked On College Basketball Discord. It's free and the link is in your show notes. If you would, subscribe to the show on video and audio. Smash the like button so we know you're here if you're watching on YouTube. Also, leave us a rating and review. 5 stars. Talk about why you love the show. It's so helpful. All right, y'all. As always, apologies to the lawyer family. Let's go Wildcats. And until tomorrow, peace.